So good morning. I'm happy to see or not see, but smell that the air quality is not too bad in this room, I think, yeah? Because it could be better, I'm sure, but I'm glad. So that's good. Hola, so we begin this morning, and we'll pick up where we left off yesterday. Just as a footnote, because the last session we had here was with Yemen, is that I really don't, in this particular retreat, I don't regard her, and I think in the future, I don't regard her as an assistant teacher, because in fact I didn't and will not ask her, please teach this, please teach that. So she is listening all the way through the morning, and then she'll teach whatever seems appropriate. So she's not an assistant. Just to let you know how this is working out. So in terms of yesterday, this distinction between genuine well-being and stimulus-driven pleasure, I think, is something that great civilizations, at least many of them throughout history, have known. Great sages, East and West, have known. And we have largely forgotten, even though it's part of our own. It's the Muslim tradition, it's the Jewish, it's the Christian, it's the Greco-Roman. It's right there, but we are so, I think, enamored with ourselves, enamored with the notion of progress. I've been trained fairly extensively in science, and I was told when I was studying physics that in science, if an article is published more than 5 years ago, a paper, nobody reads it. Like, what did they know 5 years ago? You know, we've learned so much more since then. So what happened last month, and just trying to keep up with all of the articles that are published every month is pretty much a full-time job. So maybe we're just getting carried away a little bit, that the newer is always better than the older. This distinction, though, between hedonia and eudaimonia is, I think, the distinction that really quite could possibly, if we embrace it, not just a few people in here and there, but if it's shouted from the rooftops, if it's taught throughout the media, if it's taught in education, it might actually save us, because there's no way to persuade people, and I wouldn't want to persuade people, not to wish for something better. As the Dalai Lama said, that's the whole motion of our life towards happiness, but not just having happiness and then saying, okay, I'm good, and being satisfied, but looking for something more, something better. And then right there comes what I call cognitive intelligence, intelligence with respect to our desires, aspirations, goals, motivations, that you will want something better. And from a purely biological perspective, if we just regard ourselves as animals, which many people do, and that human existence can be understood purely in terms of natural selection, genetic mutation, as one philosopher I know said, we are animals, 100% animals, get over it, you know? And if that's what we are, just animals, then we should be able to quite thoroughly understand how we've evolved the way we are, purely by amoral, mindless, biological adaptation. As Stephen Jay Gould said, there is no meaning in evolution. It is purposeless, it's meaningless, it's mindless, and of course it's amoral. And I've just never found that compelling. It's not because of a religious faith. I just say you don't have enough evidence to draw that conclusion. So with great respect for Charles Darwin, it's not the whole picture. And that's a scientific statement, not a religious expression of faith or belief. Because it is not biologically adaptive to always want something better, want enough, parsimony, want enough to survive and procreate. You've done your job. If you're an animal, you've done your job. If you survive, procreated, you passed on your genes, you're done. You get a seal of approval. But that's not satisfying for most people. So this theme, if we can learn, not just a few religious people in a room, or people interested in Dharma, Buddhism, but if we can learn to know what to realistically expect, that's all I'm talking about. What can we realistically expect from hedonia? What is realistic? Food, clothing, shelter, medical care, education, and so on. We can expect that it will help us survive and procreate and give us some pleasure along the way that will come and go but never be sustainable. But it will never, ever satisfy that yearning for something more, something better. And when I look at that, when I look at it deeply, I think you have to go way beyond science to fathom why. Why are you here? I'm not going to help you make more money. I'm not going to really do much for your hedonic life. I'm not going to help you survive or procreate. I'm not going to help you for wealth, power, or prestige. I think the only way to understand this is by understanding there's a whole dimension to existence, the whole dimension to our existence that's calling us forth and will never let us be satisfied until we come to that source of genuine well-being, eudaimonia. So I'd like to share with you just a couple of quotes just to give a mere suggestion of the universality of this. Not to say that everyone defines eudaimonia and hedonia in the same way, they don't, but complementary, different facets of the same jewel. And so here's just something I picked up from a marvelous book on Christianity that I read during my graduate studies at Stanford. It's called Amor Dei, if you're interested. Amor Dei, Love of God, by Burnaby, I believe it is, Burnaby. But the theme of eudaimonia comes up, again the Greek term, and eudaimonia is, I just slightly changed his wording here, is genuine well-being. I think it's better than happiness, because happiness, Einstein was talking about happiness. I think really the best definition of eudaimonia is genuine well-being. It refers to the perfect life insofar as perfection is attainable by mankind. And I'm quite sure he's tracing back to Aristotle, who goes back to Plato, who goes back to Socrates. It refers to the perfect life. Perfect life, the good life, the perfect life. And everything hinges, the fate of humanity, the fate of each of us here, hinges on, I think more than anything else, when you think of the good life, the perfect life, what is your aspiration, what is your heart's desire? Everything hinges on what comes to mind. And is it just hedonia, then you'll never be satisfied. And then just take a little teaspoon from Christianity, but one of the great patriarchs of Christianity, according to Augustine, St. Augustine, 4th century, the only thing we need to know is the answer to the question, how can man be happy? From Epistole 118.13. So I think we really have, I think Einstein was reading what was in the air, he's picking what was in the air, and be happy, be happy. You know, there's kind of a happiness craze going on. Have you noticed? Psychology is happy, happy, happy. Articles coming up in newspapers and so forth. How do you be happy? How do you be happy? I find almost entirely it's dealing with hedonia. Almost entirely. You want to be happy? 5 keys to be happy. It's all out there. All out there. Norway is the happiest country in the world. Finland is happiness. Finland now has the youngest prime minister in history, a 34-year-old woman. Yay! But Finland's a happy place. I've been there in Norway and Denmark and Holland and New Zealand. They're happy places. But the criteria is 100% hedonic. They don't even raise the issue of eudaimonia, and yet this is the wisdom of the world, and it's pointing to the meaning of life. Whether you're a Christian, you're a Buddhist, you're a Socratic, it's the meaning of life. And so we trivialize it. And people then ignore whether they're even getting happier and happier. And this is what is the recipe for disaster. People are getting more and more and more something. And somehow, as if they're subjected themselves to self-hypnosis, thinking if I have more of this, I'm more famous, more powerful, more wealthy, have a better car, whatever it may be, something out there, that they just mesmerize themselves in thinking this actually has some meaning in it, and it has anything to do with being happier. So just this point, what can we realistically expect of hedonia? Survive and procreate, have some good times now and then. As the Buddha said, enjoying sensual pleasures now and again when the occasion arises. Yeah, nice, nothing wrong with that. But if that's all you're doing, then what's the difference between us and a pig or any other animal? And that's not deprecating animals. I love animals. But we are not just animals. So that point, and then a second point. The question has come up, it may come up when Yangchen and I have our dialogue towards the latter part of this retreat, that we'll delve into a little, what we can do in an hour and a half, interface between Buddhism and Christianity. But it occurred to me, especially this morning, the question that can be raised, and people who've thought about it tend to have pretty strong opinions, can one be a Buddhist and a Christian? Or can you simply be a Buddhist who's sympathetic to Christianity, or a Christian who likes some Buddhist practices? Like Christian, but I like Zen. Christian, I like Vipassana. Christian, I like going to a Buddhist candy shop and saying, I like that one, I like that one. But the rest of them you can keep. Karma and reincarnation, I don't think so. But mindfulness, I like very much. That's fine. But can one actually be a Buddhist and actually be a Christian? And one can see how many deep issues that might be raised. But frankly, in a way, I think it's a categorical error. The question itself is a categorical error. And I'll tell you why. I think it's a pretty safe statement. I don't think about what I'm saying is in any way controversial. But Judaism, is it a science, a philosophy, or a religion? We know it's a religion. Not a philosophy, it's not a science. Okay, Christianity. Is it religion, science, or philosophy? It's a religion. As I heard her say just a couple of days ago, Jesus wasn't teaching philosophy. That's a religion. Islam, there's no question about it. Were there great philosophers? Have there been great philosophers and great scientists who are Muslim? Yes, definitely. Islam is a religion. And so we get so accustomed in our Eurocentric or Mediterranean-centric, Judeo-Christian, the Semitic, and the Greco-Roman, we get so comfortable with and so accustomed to our categories of science, religion, philosophy. And we think that Plato, was he a scientist, philosopher? Einstein, scientist? We just put them right into our boxes, right? But if we step outside of our neighborhood, the Mediterranean basin, basically, that goes down to Jerusalem and so forth, and all the way through Greece and up to Europe, and then everywhere Europe spread, which is everywhere. We get so familiar with our categories, we assume they're universal. And that's just part of imperialism and capitalism, colonialism, And so when the first Europeans went to India, and they saw, or Thailand, or Sri Lanka, or China, or Japan, and they see what are clearly temples, places of worship, and they see monks, and they see incense, and they see rituals and chanting, say, what do you call this? Oh, Buddhism? Got it. We've got it. It's a religion. Buddhists never think of themselves, I've lived with Tibetans for a long time, they never think Buddhism as a religion, because they don't have a word for religion. So how can they think it's a religion? You don't even have a word for religion in Tibetan or Sanskrit. That's our baby. They don't have a word for philosophy, and they didn't have a word for science either. That doesn't mean they had no religion, philosophy, or science. But I'd like to just spin this one, and then we'll go to meditation. But I think these points are very, very meaningful. One of the epithets, the Buddha is called by many names, Sugata, Tathagata, Garbha, Buddha, and so forth. But one of the epithets common in the Buddhist tradition from early on is Buddha is the great physician, the great physician. So if you're going to start a religion, as we understand religion, and we have three paradigmatic religions, Taoism, not really a religion. Hinduism, yeah. Taoism, but it's just kind of taking our shoes and slapping them on somebody else, and if your feet don't fit in the shoe, well, just cut off your toes, Tibetan Buddhists don't call themselves Buddhists. Hardly ever. You can say Buddhist in Tibetan. Sangyepa. I can't remember when I've ever heard a Tibetan say, I'm not Sangyepa yin. That would be really Buddhist. I can't remember hearing one. They have that word, but they don't use it. Ask any Tibetan, are you, if you ask them, the way you ask them is, Kira Namba Yimbe. Namba. It's easy, Namba. That's the way to say, are you Buddhist? You know what Namba means? Insider. But not in an elitist sense. One could easily say that, but you're wrong. It's not an elite, we're insiders, everybody is outsiders. It's not like that. But insider in the sense of, when I'm looking for happiness, I know where to look, inside. When I'm looking for the causes of suffering, I look inside. That makes me a Buddhist. And so if you're going to start a religion, do you think it's really a smart thing to say, hello everybody, I'm about to start a religion, ready, heads up? There's a reality of suffering. Downer, what a buzzkill. Like, we wanted something uplifting, dude. I mean, Buddha nature, heaven, celestial gods, something cool. Something to uplift us, inspire us to be religious. And you're saying, there's a reality of suffering, know it. You have anything better than that? Yeah. There's a source of suffering. Eradicate it. Anything else? There is liberation, realize it. What? There's a path, follow it. Which part of that was religious? There was no leap of faith, there was no appeal to authority, and the Buddha himself said, do not accept my teachings out of faith, but check them for yourself. And accept them only if you have checked them for yourself and you see they are valid and they're helpful. That's a paraphrase, a very close paraphrase. So to say, can you be a Buddhist and a Buddhist Christian, I think it's like asking, can I be a chiropractor and a Christian? Can I be a Freudian psychoanalyst and a Christian? Can I be a Republican and a Christian? Give that some thought. But these are clearly silly questions, right? If religion, can you be a Muslim and a Christian? I think not. I don't think so. No, if you take Jesus as Savior, then you're not a Muslim. And if you think Muhammad is the final prophet, you're not a Christian. Boom. So when you have religion, you're gonna get a nice yes or no answer. But what makes one a Buddhist? And there are criteria. In Buddhism itself, there are criteria, are you Buddhist or not? It's not a matter of your belief system. It's not creed. It's not a catechism. It's not a list, you believe this, okay, you're in. It's really a matter of, it's trust, it's faith, it's confidence, it's trust is the best word. That is, one takes refuge, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And what does that mean? It means that as I am seeking to be free of suffering and its causes, as I'm seeking to find not just happiness, eudaimonia, authentic well-being, genuine well-being, sublime well-being, and its causes. This is what I've always wanted, but I've never succeeded. And now I've learned of the Buddha, I've learned of the Dharma, I've learned of the Sangha, and I've listened to, and I've learned about the life of the Buddha and the other great sages, the great saints in the Buddhist tradition, and I've looked into the Dharma revealed by the Buddha, and it makes sense. And I trust what is being stated here, not by leap of faith, but it really makes sense. And then I took the medicine, because the Buddha is the physician and the Dharma is the medicine, and the Sangha, those realized followers of the Buddha, they are your nurses. And I've taken the medicine and it helps. And the Sangha are true spiritual friends, and the Buddha is the great physician. Therefore, you're a Buddhist. Now, could you come to that conclusion and be a 100% Christian? I think that's a good topic for conversation. But you need to know what are the parameters of being a Christian, or Jew, or Buddhist, or Hindu, or what have you. But also be clear about what does it mean to be a Buddhist. It is one who is an insider, not dismissing the enormous significance of what's happening in the world around us. This is not egocentric. It's not just all about me and mine. Because we know at the core of Buddha Dharma is the self, personal identity, me. I do not exist as someone independent. The Buddha never ever said you don't exist. That's ridiculous. Because then he'd have to say, if you don't exist, I don't exist, in which case nobody's talking. And nobody's listening. Checkmate in about 3 sentences. That's ridiculous. He never said that. He was not a fool. How do we not exist as independent, autonomous, self-existent? And if that's true, and I'm absolutely persuaded it is, then my very presence here, just this person, I could be anybody, but just this person, I do not exist independent of you. You do not exist independent of all those around you. We do not exist independently of our fellow animal creatures on this planet. All of us creatures, we do not exist independently of the environment. The environment, as it is, does not exist independently of us, the living creatures on this planet. And therefore, if I'm going to seek freedom from suffering and its causes, including, most importantly, genuine unhappiness, that would be cool. That we are not bringing genuine unhappiness with us wherever we go. We are free of genuine unhappiness. And then we will respond to situations with sadness, with prayer, and so forth when we see calamity, adversity, major fires that have not, I think, killed not human life, I understand, but how many animals have died in these fires. So, great physician. If we start there, that Buddha, when he spoke of the Four Noble Truths, he was not starting a religion. It was not in his mind. It's not been in the minds of any Buddhist throughout Asia for 2,500 years, because they don't have the word religion, because that's one of our babies. That's one of our babies. Religion is a Western construct, a very useful one. And there are elements, by our construct, there are elements of Buddhism that are clearly religious, but don't let that veil the fact that there are elements from the beginning of the Buddha Dharma that are philosophical, by our criteria. And from the beginning, there are elements of Buddhism that are clearly scientific. Not in terms of objective and technology-driven and so forth, but making observations, having hypotheses, putting them to experiment, and then seeing by carefully checking, is it true or not? That's science. Not the telescope, not the mathematics. The science is having hypotheses, putting them to the test of experience, and seeing is it so or is it not. If a theory doesn't lend itself to that type of empirical repudiation or confirmation, that theory is not a scientific theory. The idea that everything in the universe is physical is not even remotely scientific. It's just a belief. Will never be scientifically tested. Can't be. So the theme of Buddha as the great physician, which is a very ancient category in which to place him. One of the first great healers of Asia. Then let's go to one of the first great healers of the West. And he was not quite, well, pretty close to a contemporary of the Buddha, maybe. I don't know if there's any real agreement on when the Buddha was born, but Hippocrates was born around 460 before the Common Era. Pretty darn close. Yeah, pretty darn close. Just a few quotes from him, and that'll lead us into meditation, and we'll go. But it's just wonderful. Oh, no, not wonderful, it's not the right word. Quite startling to see how much wisdom we have in our own culture without ever looking to Asia that we've completely forgotten about. See whether many of you have medical professions or psychology and so forth. How often does this come in modern medicine, whether physical medicine or medical medicine? Natural forces within us are the true healers of disease. Did it come up in your medical training? It's not marketable. There's no profit in that. Right? But it's one of the most profound truths ever uttered about health. Natural forces within us are the true healers of disease. And then he adds elsewhere, and doctors are there to facilitate, to enable the natural forces which are the true healers. It's profound. And he's saying natural forces within us. Well, a theist might say it's God that actually heals. A Mahayana Buddhist might say the source of all healing is actually your Buddha nature. Manifesting your body, manifesting your mind. And then a second one, enormously important. I know it comes up, but I don't think it comes nearly as much as it deserves. Second point, very simple. If someone wishes for good health, have I caught everybody's attention? If someone wishes for good health, one must first ask oneself if he is ready to do away with the reasons for his illness. Only then is it possible to help him. Are you ready to do away with the reasons for your illness? Might you be part of the problem? Not you as an individual, but you in terms of your conduct, your behavior, your diet, the way you engage with reality, the way you use your mind. Could you be making your body physically ill by what you're doing with your mind? I know John Kabat-Zinn, when I first heard him speak, gave a 2.5-hour talk on MBSR to the Dalai Lama, and I was translating for him. He said stress, simple stress, afflictive stress, excess stress. Stress will aggravate the symptoms of every known disease. From a common cold to terminal cancer, you name it, the whole bandwidth. Stress will make it feel worse. It will aggravate the symptoms. It can actually make the disease worse. Right? And therefore, if you can alleviate stress, you can potentially alleviate some of the symptoms of every known disease. So it's a wonderful thing he's done. Mindfulness-based stress reduction. Hundreds of thousands of people have benefited. Good. Good. But we need to ask, and this will be actually the theme of this whole retreat, the apophatic and the cataphatic. Cataphatic, what can I do? It is a whole cataphatic approach, and against the universal. It's in Christianity right there, it's in Buddhism, Hinduism, Zen, and so forth. I mean, it's all over the place. The cataphatic approach is the answer to what can I do? to find the more, the better, to find satisfaction, fulfillment, salvation, liberation, awakening. What can I do to purify my mind, to become a more ethical person? What can I do to be happier? And the cataphatic brings us a cornucopia. She's really smart. Cornucopia, good word? Cornucopia, isn't that good? I mean, like a bounty. Isn't that right? Okay, good. I have to check. But a cornucopia of responses. Shantadeva's Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life is a cornucopia, a bounty, a feast of wisdom that is a response to that question. What can we do? But the apophatic, I will interpret, is the response to what am I already doing to perpetuate my unhappiness and to block my happiness? What am I already doing to make myself mentally ill, physically ill? What am I already doing? And the answer to that is stop it. I could really go on here, one of my favorite stories. Bob Newhart, can I say that or not? Yes, I have to. It's a joke, but it's a really cool joke. Bob Newhart, way back, like 40 years ago, a very well-known comedian, and he had this little skit where he was a psychotherapist. And it was a really good deal. He would only charge $5 for a session. And the session would only last 5 minutes. And so he's sitting very properly there. A patient comes in and said, "Oh, Dr. Newhart, I've been suffering a lot of depression and anxiety, and I'm just really, many, many thoughts are coming up about low esteem, and what can you do?" Stop it. $5, please. The next person comes in, "Oh, doctor, I'm just feeling so much paranoia and anxiety, and really, I just never feel ease. I just always have these thoughts of fear. What can you do?" Stop it. $5, please. That was his therapy. It was very good. Very much to the point. Just stop it. That's apophatic. He was teaching an apophatic approach to psychotherapy. I don't think anybody really made that link. Is that a trademark? Can I have a trademark on that? Bob Newhart was an apophatic psychotherapist. So, the final one here from Hippocrates is to do nothing. To do nothing is sometimes a good remedy. Because if you're doing nothing, then you're not doing anything to perpetuate your illness. So sometimes throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just stop doing anything. And then perhaps then the natural forces within us may heal your disease. And then you can know that you're ready to do with the reasons for your illness because you've just stopped doing anything at all. So this brings us today to, there we go, done, our practice for this morning. I would like to give one further guided meditation on the first of, I think it's going to be 4 different methods of mindfulness of breathing. We're not quite ready to go here. I'd like to talk about it a little bit because I think that will enrich the understanding. So I've taught it, was it once? Yeah, I think I taught it once or twice, and then Yangshin taught it once. I'd like to do it once again, but this time introduce a term because we'll be leaving just in several days, Sunday afternoon. And following that, when we're back to our homes, our more routine daily ways of life, the chances are that sooner or later you'll have a day or a morning, an afternoon, a weekend, in which there's just a lot of tumult in your mind, a lot of just really emotional turbulence, really feeling very upset about one thing, it could be anything, but really feeling very upset, very turbulent, no peace of mind at all, just a lot of turbulence, a lot of thoughts coming up just obsessively, compulsively, no peace of mind. It's just hard to even be such a near neighbor with you in your mind. As that American novelist said, my mind is a bad neighborhood. My mind's like a bad neighborhood. I try not to go there alone. So if you ever feel your mind is a bad neighborhood and you wish you could just, find another neighborhood to live in, you can. And I'm about to give you the key to finding a better neighborhood, at least for a while. Your neighborhood of your mind won't go away, but sometimes at least you can take a brief leave of absence. It might actually be the best thing to do nothing to the mind, to try to make it better, to not do anything at all to the mind. And so on such days it may happen, yeah? When you'll feel really upset about something, emotionally upset, turbulent, and the mind is just out of control, rampaging along, then something you might try, I'm going to give you a shorthand so you just have a word, and then I'll give the meaning of that word as I'm defining it. Go into the infirmary. It's just my short term. I'm not referring to a clinic or hospital. Go into the infirmary. And in this meditation retreat, of course, I'm not referring to anything in medical profession because I have no training whatsoever, but the infirmary is this. And it can be good any time, but especially when the mind is just like that, really upset. And that is, the infirmary is to go into a quiet place. It could be easily your bedroom, but some quiet place. And the top of your bed is just fine, probably. Or it could be a yoga mat if you like something a bit firmer. But lie down, and then go into the Shavasana. So the Shavasana is your feet, you're all in a straight line. You let your feet drop to the side. Your hands, if there's enough room on your yoga mat or your bed, 30 degrees out from your torso. Your head should have a nice comfortable cushion under it. And then just go into total meltdown of relaxation. Do not flex a single muscle in your body. Because this is called the corpse position. And you don't need any effort to emulate a corpse. They can rest in that posture effortlessly. They're dead. And so rest in that posture, and then be in a very softly lit room. Your eyes can be closed if you like, probably better. And just go into that total settling of the body in its natural state, relaxed and still, but now just total relaxation. Don't worry about the vigilant business. And do settle your respiration, just natural flow. Your chest is open, your diaphragm is open, the belly, there's nothing to impede it. And so just let your breathing flow. Let your breathing rise up to meet you and embrace you and soothe you and calm you, the breath itself. And as much as you can, just settle your awareness, releasing your mind. Come to that stillness, having settled your mind in its natural state. And now let the light of your awareness permeate, like a light filling a room. Let the light of your awareness permeate the entire somatic field. The whole field. Just be mindfully aware of the whole field. Around that stillness of your awareness, just be aware of the whole field of tactile sensations of the body. And then selectively, now we're going to a Sanghas method, selectively focus on those sensations among solidity and fluidity, warmth and so forth, and all kinds of tingling and vibration. Focus just selectively on those sensations throughout the whole body. I'll call it fluctuations of prana. It's just a first person experience. There's nothing esoteric or leap of, faith here. It's just what you can probably experience as fluctuations of energy, just movements, subtle movements, correlated with the in and out breath. So it is a Sanghas method. But now with this caveat, big emphasis on relaxation. And how? Every out-breath. Your thoughts are coming up. Emotions are coming up. Memories are coming up. Fears are coming up. Future is coming up. And every out-breath, continue releasing and releasing and releasing. You're doing virtually nothing. You're emulating a corpse. Not much to do. And you're breathing out. We're already breathing out. And what you're not doing is identifying with those thoughts, getting caught up in those thoughts, being carried away by those thoughts, getting caught in the grip of those emotions and desires. You're not doing apathetic. And let the natural forces within you calm you, soothe you, nurture you, hold you, bring you back to balance. And if you fall asleep, it's probably just what you needed, so don't worry about it. Okay? That's what I call the infirmary. So I've been leading now for 13 years, leading people in actually sometimes pretty long retreats, starting with just 3 months, but then 6 months, a year, multiple years. And so leading people in retreat, then you'll learn a lot about going into retreat in addition to your own experience. And what does happen when one is engaging in authentic practice under wise guidance, having a good mentor, a good guide in your meditative practice, one should already know that you're bound to encounter upsurges, upheavals in the body, upheavals in the emotion, upheavals in memories, upheavals in desires. This is not an aberration. This is not because you're doing something wrong. Assuming you are practicing correctly under wise guidance, you're going to see a lot of stuff coming up. And that's exactly what's supposed to happen. We'll get to this a bit later, but in the practice of Shamatha, which I first learned in 1972, this wonderful Tibetan Lama, Geshe Ngawang Taige, told us, the first sign of progress as you're following this path of Shamatha is to clearly, lucidly recognize how chaotic your mind is. That's progress. That's not going backwards. That's recognizing what was already there, but you're too busy doing other things to even notice how messed up you were. There's one friend of mine, he's a highly trained clinical psychologist, research psychologist at UCLA, but we were monks together 45 years ago. He's Tibetan, and he studied Tibetan medicine much more than I did. And we were attending an international conference on Tibetan medicine, maybe 15 years ago. And he commented, speaking to a whole room full of people in America, Washington, D.C., and he said, he, as a Tibetan, but living in America now, and totally bicultural, he said, well, I've been attending to Americans now for quite a number of years, and my conclusion is that in terms of your nervous system or prana system, you're all ill. You're all ill. But considering how ill you are, you're coping very well. But shamatha is not designed, shamatha absolutely does not anesthetize, manage the symptoms, suppress the symptoms. It does the opposite. Every psychopharmaceutical drug suppresses the symptoms of mental disease, and there's not even a single one that cures even a single disease. And yet, like raving madmen, we hear from the National Institute of Mental Health and many other organizations, just like a broken record where everybody's fallen asleep and the record keeps on playing, that all mental diseases are really nothing more than malfunctions of the brain. If that were true, we would see, with all the advances in neuroscience over the last 50 years, and the hundreds of psychopharmaceutical drugs, and the billions of dollars made by marketing, then we would have seen at least one. No, we should see a dozen or 100 psychopharmaceutical drugs. Oh, I used to have depression, and I took this medication for a month, and hallelujah, I'm now cured. I used to have insomnia, but I took 5 tablets, and now I'm not experiencing any more insomnia. I had PTSD. Oh, that was gone. It was 1 month medication. Finito. Oh, anxiety, I had it, but yeah, I got this great medicine, and no more anxiety. That's never happened. So a whole field of pharmaceutical industry is all a form of anesthesia. If you want to heal your mind, you have to look at it. Overwhelmingly, the causes of mental distress are internal. So be a nangba. If you're a devout Christian, be a nangba. An atheist, be a nangba. A nangba is an insider. It's being realistic. So the infirmary is first aid. It's first aid. When you feel like roadkill on the road of life, it's first aid. It stops the bleeding. And then go off to the hospital of the Dharma of your choice and get the true medicine. The Christian Dharma, the Buddhist, the Jewish, whatever it may be. Get your Dharma and then heal. So, I think that's it. So there's just not enough floor space in this room with a number of people in the room for anybody, a small fraction of the people here to find a place to go supine. But when you're home, there's certainly a place. It could be on a rug, it could be in your bed or anything. But I'd really encourage you to experiment with that and get over the notion, if you have the notion, I can't meditate when I'm lying down because I just get drowsy. Then I will, who is his name? Yeah, Bob Newhart. Stop that. It's just a habituation. All it is a habit. And that is in the past, when you lie down, you're spacing out, you're watching television, but probably taking a nap. And you do that 1,000 times, and then, oh, when I lie down, I get drowsy. Of course you do. It's called association. But what I would suggest from now on is when you go into the Shavasana, this is not just lying down. This is a posture. I trained under Iyengar intensely for about 2.5 months. I was training in his yoga ashram in Pune, and I was practicing 5 hours a day. And this man, I mean, he's passed away now, but man, he was brilliant. And he could do every asana I think was known to the whole yoga system. But when he taught Shavasana, And he was so precise. So precise. I mean, any asana you're doing, he'd find these micro-managing, moving your elbow this way and that way and so forth. He was brilliant. But when he taught the Shavasana, he taught that with all the precision of any other, the most extremely difficult asana. He taught that with just such precision, this way. And this is not lying down to take a nap. This is a yoga asana. And you will not be able to meditate unless you've mastered this. And it's not just a positioning of the body. It's being in that position, your body emulating a corpse and your mind settling into its natural state. If you're lying in that posture and your mind just buzzing around thinking about what's for lunch, you're not practicing that. You're not practicing Shavasana. You look like you are. You can fool a lot of people. But if you're not practicing yoga internally and all you're doing is adopting a posture, who you think you're fooling? That's not yoga. Yoga is quintessentially, it's internal. Hindu yoga, Buddhist yoga, any kind of yoga. So to rest there is allowing the natural forces within you to heal. There'll be a lot more about that, but I think that after my very brief introduction, I think it's time to meditate. So please find a comfortable position. And when you're home, I would encourage you, explore until you have mastered the Shavasana and really know for the benefits of settling in the infirmary, which can be a tremendous boon. As a very brief reminder, when you hear the chime, as an expression of loving kindness for yourself, an act of kindness, set your body and mind at ease. Relax. Relax into the present moment in silence. Before we go further, I would invite you right now to explicitly bring to mind what is your heart's desire? What do you seek out of life? What is your deepest wish? What is your vision of a good life, a perfect life for you? What is your highest aspiration for yourself and all those around you with whom you all arise, we all arise, in interdependence? So the very notion of aspiring for our own well-being to the exclusion of everyone else simply makes no sense. What is your aspiration? What is your motivation? And let now your practice be imbued with this motivation. And the more meaningful your motivation, the more meaningful will be the ensuing practice. Let your awareness eyes descend to the ground. Feel the whole space of your body. And settle your body in a posture of ease, of comfort, of relaxation. Let your body be still, apart from the movement of the breath. And even in the supine position, psychologically adopt a posture of vigilance, wide awake, clear and present, while the body is emulating the posture of a corpse, utterly relaxed. And with joyful surrender, a release of all effort, all desires and aspirations in this moment, while imbued with your deeper aspiration, release the breath. Ease the movements of your respiration. That your breathing becomes more and more effortless. And your movements will thereby become more and more subtle. As your respiration settles in its natural healing rhythm, restoring the balance of your body and your mind. And again, as an act of kindness to yourself, just for the moment, just for these few minutes of this session, release all your cares, just for the while. The hopes and fears, all the cogitations about the past and present and future. And let your awareness come to rest, releasing all grasping to the activities of the mind, especially hopes and fears, desires and aversions. Give it a rest. Release all that grasping and set your awareness at ease. And the awareness that is at ease, free of grasping to the activities of the mind, is naturally still and it is naturally clear and bright. And by resting in awareness, aware of the activities of the mind, not withdrawing from them, but neither identifying with them, simply being present with them. By resting in stillness and observing the movements of the mind in this way, gradually, over time, your mind will settle in its natural state. various forms of mindfulness of breathing that we'll explore over the first couple of days of this retreat. It is simply your choice whether you would like to have your eyes softly closed or hooded, which is to say partially open with just a little bit of light coming in, or wide open. You can practice in any of these three ways. It's your choice. But it is important your eyes feel soft and all the muscles around the eyes soft. Your forehead open, spacious. No contraction. No furrowing of the brow. No hardening of the eyes. No clenching of the jaws. Release. And while resting in the stillness of awareness, let the light of your awareness, which is to say, the flow of your attention, reach out and illuminate the entire tactile field permeating your body, and selectively focus on those movements, those fluctuations that are clearly correlated with the in and outflow of the breath. Explicitly cultivate in this practice, especially. And that is breath by breath, especially with every exhalation. Whether you're sitting upright or lying down, with every out-breath, relax more and more deeply. Feeling whatever residual tension persists in the body, loosening up, melting away. Surrender your muscles to gravity with each exhalation. Every out-breath, releasing all the way to the end of the breath with a quiet mind, so you're fully attentive to the outflow of the breath. Let every exhalation be like a gentle gust of breeze, a gust of wind that blows away dry leaves, blows them away out in front of you and off into the sky. Every out-breath, let the breath blow away, gently blow away any thoughts, memories, emotions, desires. Just release them into the space of your awareness and return to stillness and silence with every exhalation. And the balance is to relax in this way with your body, your breathing, your mind. Relax more and more deeply without losing clarity, without being spaced out, drowsy, dull. Maintain the clarity with which you began. Relax more deeply. Sustain the clarity with which you began. This is your first step on the path of Shamatha. see that you are not only relaxing more deeply, but you are indeed sustaining the flow of clear cognizance, a clear knowing of the rhythm of the respiration. When the breath is long, you know it's long. When it's short, you know it's short. In order to ensure that you're not slip-sliding away into dullness and laxity. Very gently, with each inhalation, attend closely and clearly to these sensations throughout the entire body, these fluctuations, even very subtle ones, corresponding to the rhythm of the respiration. With each inhalation, gently arouse and focus, retaining that clarity with which you began. And with every exhalation, relax more and more deeply. In so doing, as you breathe in, you'll overcome, remedy, or prevent the occurrence of attention deficit disorder. And with every exhalation, as you relax more and more deeply, you'll release the energy behind, the turbulence behind attention hyperactivity disorder. And in so doing, you'll balance the flow of your attention so that it is indeed relaxed, still, and clear. And let's now continue practicing in silence. as I do very, very frequently, I revise the notes right while I'm using them, so I've already made a number of revisions just in the first few pages, and I'm going to make more revisions on the next passages. And so by the time we come to the end of this retreat, then I'll ask probably Rain to send everybody the new notes. So you'll have that digitally. That'd be nice, yeah? And so I'm going to just shuffle tiny bit the order of the next couple of points. The first of the practices that we'll be focusing on, we've already begun, is mindfulness of breathing, and again I'll give 4 different methods. After that we'll move to the method of observing the mind, resting in stillness, but really having single-pointed focus on the stillness, but also peripherally or secondarily the movements of the mind, and that is every activity of the mind. And finally, the culminating and most profound of Shamatha methods is simply resting in awareness of awareness. And just by the way, for those of you who have either are Christian or have an interest in Christianity, and I have an interest, if I didn't, I would have to be, how do you say, simply ignorant, because I was raised in a very Christian household. My father is a Christian theologian. And in my family tree on both sides, you hit the tree and just missionaries and Bible school teachers and philosophers and ministers, you're getting bushels on both sides. And so that's very much part of my background. And for me to have that personality integration, I need to have that fully incorporated in my understanding of everything. And so, how do you say? So just as a matter of curiosity, in terms of mindfulness of breathing, I wrote a book years ago that it was maybe my favorite book that I wrote, because I wrote it in dialogue with my stepdaughter. She asked me for a birthday present years ago. She says, Alan, would you write me a book for my birthday? I have questions. What's the meaning of life? What's the relationship between science and religion? How do you find happiness? What's the meaning of enlightenment? I have a number of questions I'd like to put to you, and I'd like you to write me a book and answer my questions. I said, okay. And I'd write a chapter, send it to her, and she'd give me feedback. I didn't understand this. This made no sense. I like this one. And then I'd revise. And so we went chapter by chapter. So I was really enjoying it. It was the only book I've ever written that was dialogical, with a very bright and very sincere, now middle-aged woman. But that was quite a joy. So it's called Mind in the Balance. And that is Mind in the Balance, what's it called? Science, Buddhism, and Christianity. So I'm weaving those three there. I was integrating my own life, because I have a long background in science. I wanted to be a scientist from the time I was 13. But my point here very briefly is, if you're interested in Christianity, then I have highlighted in that book, within the orthodox, mainstream Christian tradition, mindfulness breathing. It's there. You don't have to look outside. Observing the mind, that's there, and I'll show you the sources. Awareness of awareness, that's there. I'll show you the sources. Right? It was published by Columbia University Press, so it has full sources. So if anybody's interested, it's there. But this is sponsored by a Buddhist retreat, Buddhist center, Buddhist retreat, kind of. I'm a Buddhist, and so that's where the overwhelming majority of material here is coming from. But I mentioned before that the Buddha in the Pali Canon, that is, these early recordings of the Buddhist teachings, he taught 40 different methods of shamatha, and a number of them were specifically, like a great physician, healing the attentional imbalances and emotional imbalances, as we'll see in some detail. He prescribed, and that's exactly the word, for those people who really have more hot-tempered, irritable, volatile, here's what, for you, here's the method I would suggest. And he prescribed it. For those who are more hedonistic, now in that rule, hedonistic, lusty, sensuous, always looking for more sensual pleasure, okay, this one. For those who are really arrogant, I'm better than you are. The Tibetan word for pride is nagyel, I win. Nagyel, I win. Who's better, you or me? Me. That's pride. If you're proud, this one. If you're kind of just confused and delusional, this one is 5 temperament. And if you're one of those oddballs that has a lot of rumination, the mind is like a faucet you can't turn off because it just keeps going blah, 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 blah. I call it obsessive compulsive delusional disorder. Because the thoughts arise obsessively. There's no voluntary, they're just happening obsessively. They compulsively draw us in so we identify with them. And they're delusional in the sense that when we're caught in that little micro, non-lucid stream of thought, we're not even aware we're thinking, because we're so caught up in it, like in a non-lucid dream, and we tend to think that whatever we're thinking is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and that's always delusion. In Buddhist epistemology, whatever you're thinking, ready? Great big statement. Buddhist epistemology, whatever you think about anything at any time, it's never the whole truth and nothing but the truth. It's in the very nature of thought. Thought cannot capture, encompass the whole truth. Because thought carves. It carves away. It carves. And in carving away, you're bound to lose something. Because nothing exists in and of itself. If things existed in and of itself and you carved away everything around it, you get the whole truth, because that's a truth that exists in isolation. I've never actually thought this, but I think that's true. If things exist autonomously, independently, and you just understood them in isolation, you had understood everything that you need to know about them. But there's nothing that exists that way. Not space, time, matter, energy, not mind. Nothing exists that way. But that's what thought does. It carves. It's this person, not that person. And in carving this out and identifying it, we've carved away everything that's not that, in which case you may understand something about that, but there's no possible way you know the whole truth about that, because the whole truth about that has to encompass all the relationships, the network of entanglements, of interdependence. So thought's very useful, but not as useful as we often think. And this is why in Shamatha, we are developing slowly, surely, with no doctrinal allegiances, we don't have to be Buddhists or anything else, we're developing, cultivating a mode of knowing that is clear, sharp, discerning, intelligent, but what is not embedded in thought or language. And that can actually open up vast domains of reality that are veiled from thought. So just to show my sources, because this is the takeaway. Whatever Alan is teaching, passing on, and hopefully I'm doing my job, which is to clarify and authentically illuminate the sources I'm teaching. And you have all my sources, but what I've not mentioned here is the roughly 40 lamas and Theravada teachers and lamas of all four schools under whose guidance I have come over the last 49 years. And so once again, that's where all the teaching come from. These sources and my lamas. Without them, I would have nothing to say here. I'd just be sitting here and say, how are you? Would you like some tea? I'd really have nothing to offer at all. There'd be no reason to invite me, except for vacation. So, just to show the sources, Buddhaghosa, the most important commentator to the whole Theravada tradition, he is to Theravada what Tsongkhapa is to Gelugpa tradition. He writes here in his masterpiece, Path of Purification, which is a free download on the internet, as to, and it's legal, you're not pirating anything. Buddhaghosa states, as to suitability of temperament, mindfulness of breathing is the one meditation subject suitable for one of deluded temperament and for one of ruminative temperament. There's another one for delusional, but this way, if you're delusional and you're ruminative, if you're confused and you just have a blabbermouth of the mind, obsessive, compulsive, delusional, then the one method that is suitable is mindfulness of breathing. That's from the Theravada tradition. And Asanga is one of the two greatest patriarchs of Mahayana Buddhism in India. There's Nagarjuna and Asanga, so he speaks with tremendous authority. In his classic work, Shravakabhumi, if rumination uniquely dominates one's behavior, then one focuses one's attention on awareness of the exhalation and inhalation of the breath. So there it is, two gold standards. Mindfulness, breathe, and then Tsongkhapa and many other great Tibetan lamas that are citing these sources, especially Asanga. And the Buddha himself said it. So, and they're all basing this on what the Buddha said. So I just wanted to point that out first. And then we'll go to an enormously rich, meaningful analogy that the Buddha gives with respect to this practice of mindfulness of breathing. As we'll get a little bit later, we'll get his pith instructions, the Buddha's own pith instructions, which are extremely concise and therefore wide open to interpretation. And there are multiple ones, have been for a very long time. But I'd like to start more with the metaphor, the poetry, the imagery, and then go to the hard nuts and bolts of the technique itself, and then a lot of rich material around it. But here, he starts with this metaphor. Just as in the last month of the hot season, okay? He's teaching on the in northern India, that great, what is it called, Pujambi Plain? The Great Plain area. It goes from Delhi all the way over to the east, and it's hotter than a pistol during the summer. It's really hot, like it can be 40 degrees, 45 degrees, and so forth. The monsoon cools everything off. And the monsoon traditionally has been very timely, mid-June, mid-September. But you get, like in a place like Delhi, I've lived in India for about 6 years, so I know what I'm talking about. Delhi in late May, it's a stinker. And it's not only because of all the terrible smog you have in Delhi nowadays. 2,600 years ago, it's so hot and the air quality is terrible, not because of carbon, but dust and grime and just gunk in the air. So just before the monsoon comes, April, May, early June, the last month, when a mass of dust and dirt has swirled up. So everybody who's lived in northern India especially, you know exactly what he's talking about, let alone all the pollution nowadays. Just then, at that occasion, before the monsoon has come, a great rain cloud out of season. In other words, it's like monsoon coming early, like a cloudburst. A great rain cloud out of season disperses it and quells it on the spot. So there's the metaphor. All that dust, all the dirt that's making the air just difficult to breathe. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have that right now for everybody around Sydney? And it just you can imagine it. And it's very easily imagined. Just suddenly, this great cloud forms, and then it just drenches the earth, this downpour. And in a matter of seconds, the air's so fresh and crisp and clear, and you just want to breathe and breathe after all that yucky stuff in the air prior to that. There's the analogy. Like that, so too, concentration or samadhi. Samadhi, by way of mindfulness of breathing, when developed and cultivated, is peaceful, sublime, and ambrosial dwelling. And it disperses and quells on the spot unwholesome states whenever they arise. Okay, that's very poetic, nice metaphor. But whenever great beings like the Buddha and so many others, when they're using metaphors, when they're using poetic imagery and so forth, when they're using words like ambrosial dwelling, in my reading, it's mostly in Buddhism. There's nothing mushy about it. They're not just being flower children, saying nice sounds. He means something very specific here. And I'm going to interpret this based on years of study and practice. And that is, he says, three qualities. When you develop and cultivate this unification, this composure, this collectedness of your mind by way of mindfulness of breathing, then you will sequentially experience three whole modes of having a mind. And the first of these is peaceful. It's peace of mind. That's easy. This is not difficult. Peace of mind. Instead of being agitated and uneasy and anxious and distracted and so forth, mind calms. We could have predicted that. If you're doing the practice that we just did in that last session, imagine if you did that and you did that and you did that. The mind would become quite peaceful. We could have seen that coming, even without meditating. Yeah, that's likely to happen. And it does. It does. So that's good. No surprise there. But then he doesn't stop there. This samadhi that you're experiencing by way of mindfulness of breathing, it's sublime. Sublime? That's a strong word. Sublime? A Bach fugue in D flat minor, that's sublime. Michelangelo's David, that's sublime. But mindfulness of breathing, give me a break. Sublime? No, he means it, but he means it. But he means it exactly the way, is my interpretation. It's either right or wrong, but here's my best shot. When he says sublime, he's using the same word as the Buddhist term for eudaimonia. They don't have eudaimonia, that's Greek. They do have sat-sukha, dambe dewa in Tibetan, sublime well-being. Sublime well-being. It's eudaimonia. It's not a stimulus-driven pleasure. You're not going to get that from mindfulness of breathing because you're just attending to the sensations of the breath. There's nothing sublime about that, or even pleasant. But you are healing and balancing your mind. You're calming, soothing, balancing your mind. And as a very healthy body, well-nourished, well-exercised, fit, well exercised, feels well. How are you feeling today? Fit as a fiddle. The body feels supple, it's strong, it's healthy, immune system is up, energy's up, ready to go. What would you like me to do? I'm ready. I'm ready. That's physical well-being. I'm not blissful. No, but the body, yeah, I'm ready. I just had my workout. What would you like me to do? I'm ready. I'm ready. Yeah. That's well. It's a symptom of a body that's well-tuned, healthy. And a symptom of the mind that is well-tuned, healthy, and balanced is a sense of well-being, and that's sublime. It is not hedonic. It's not being propped up moment by moment by moment by some pleasant stimulus. Because it's not stimulus-driven. It is the symptom of the body that is well. So, sublime. This is a symptom of the mind that is well. And you will never get that with a drug. Ever. Not any kind of drug, legal or illegal. There's no drug that does this. And this has no negative side effects. Big boon. And it doesn't cost anything. No wonder it's not being marketed. You can teach it in 24 minutes, you're done. And if you want guidance, okay. So, but he's still not stopped. And ambrosial dwelling, I thought we were talking about mindfulness of breathing here. Where does ambrosia come in? But he means it. He means it. And it's a tremendous discovery that Hindu yogis discovered and Buddhists of all kinds have discovered and Christians discovered. Anybody who's really gone deeply into samadhi discovers this. And anybody can go deep in samadhi if you have a firm basis in ethics, nonviolence and benevolence, and if you have skillful guidance and effective method, good guidance, then there's a discovery waiting to be made, and it's quite extraordinary. It has a big impact on life. I know what I'm talking about here. I know some things. I'm not an advanced meditator, but at least I've been working at it for a long time. There are some people who are extremely gifted when it comes to meditation, as with mathematics and music and art and so forth. There are prodigies. At least one of my lamas, Kandola. Anybody who knows Kandola? Ranjun Nanjoma is self-emergent yogini. She's one of my revered lamas. She's born that way. She's born that way. Her samadhi is fabulous. She'll go in 8 hours, come out. A friend of mine watched her listening to His Holiness giving like a 5-hour talk. She's up there because she's an extraordinary individual. And for the whole Dharma talk, it went on for hours. With Massimo Corona, he watched her. 5 hours or so. She didn't move a muscle. And it's not just, oh wow, she's really still. She's just in a flow of devotion, and a flow of attention, a flow of samadhi. Every word His Holiness said. There are people born that way. Fantastic. And of course, it's not just, it's all over the place. There are Hindus, Christians, and so forth. They're just born that way. And then they flower and flower and flower. I'm not one of those people. Not even remotely. That's not true. I'm not. But those people are like the hair that just takes off. I'm a tortoise. And I just keep on plunking away. I'm happy. I'm a happy tortoise. I may be slow, but I'm moving in the right direction. That's it. You now have my whole life story. Ambrosial dwelling, what's that about? And what it's about is you experience a sense of peace, of serenity, you experience a sense of well-being, and then the big surprise, bliss. Bliss. It just comes shooting up like a geyser. It can manifest somatically, physical bliss. I've been teaching meditation a long time. I have heard this on more than one occasion. Because of many people I've guided meditation, I know a lot more about meditation, the variety from just myself. It's one versus quite a few. Bliss comes up. It can be somatic. Bliss comes up. It's mental. It's psychological. But it's not just a sense of well-being. That's the right word. It's bliss. It's joy. It's joy. To make the sound like it, okay, it's not all just va-va-va-boom, like wow. But let's temper that down a little bit. You're doing the practice. You're mindfully breathing in, mindfully breathing out, and you enjoy it. That's more subdued, isn't it? Mindfully breathing in, mindfully breathing out, and you just enjoy it. And it's not stimulus driven. But joy is rising, and you're enjoying the practice. That's true. And so it's a simple thing. But boy, is this not trivial. Because if that's true, then you really never really need to look outside for joy. And whenever you do, you'll be finding a stimulus that may or may not trigger joy. If you're really unhappy, depressed, and you're eating a $500, what was that? Somebody hosted me for a meal like that here in Sydney years ago. It was Japanese French fusion, and apparently the #2 restaurant in all of Australia. And a very wealthy man that I knew invited several friends to dinner, and so we had this 11-course dinner. Must have been, and we leased a whole room for this dinner party he threw. So people will do a lot to get that stimulation. But you can have a $500 meal with 11 courses, but if you're really unhappy, how much are you going to enjoy the food? You know, they gave such care to making every single course just a masterpiece. Great skill. But if you're just miserable, if you're depressed, you're anxious, take all the fun out. And it'll take the fun out of everything. Find any stimulus, and I'll tell you, there's a way not to enjoy it. If you haven't found it yet, I can help you. Take all the fun out of life. We do it all the time. So whatever's there is a gamble. Getting married is a gamble. Having kids is a gamble. Getting a job, getting to university, moving here, moving there, doing this, doing that. It's always a gamble. There's never any guarantee you'll get anything out of it. Right? Never any guarantee. Even getting out of bed, there's no guarantee. So it's always a gamble. Samsara is a gamble. Being an outer person is a gamble. Being an inner person, being an, what do I call it? Being a, what do I call it? Nangpa, insider. Yeah, being an outsider. My happiness lies out there. Then you're a gambler. But you know what's true about the casino? The house always wins. So in the casino of samsara, you can bet your life the casino will always win. Whatever you get, you will lose it. And the house will win. As you're departing in the next life, samsara will go, you thought you could win, sucker. The only good investment is dharma, because that's an investment. And one mindful breathing in and out is a sound investment, not a gamble. It's gold standard. So that's really quite important. That we may go out for Hedonia. Why not? I accepted the invitation. Alan would like to come to dinner I'm holding for several friends. Sure. And we first asked, I was told 11 courses, and I have a very small appetite. And they said, well, how I can just have the first 3? And they said, sure. So he brought the first course, and it was about the size of your thumb. I said, I think I'd like all 11. I have very fond memories of Sydney. That was one of my earliest business. So, but there's more. There's more. I mean, that's quite a lot, isn't it? Peaceful, sublime, ambrosial dwelling, but he's not finished. He said, and it dispels, and of course, you remember all the grime and junk in the air. It dispels and disperses and quells on the spot unwholesome states whenever they arise, afflictive mental states of resentment, etc., 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 etc. What's happened here is doing this simple practice, which is mostly not doing. How much are you doing, really? Sitting there mindfully breathing in. You're massively, like 99%, you're not doing anything at all. You're not doing all the stuff that aggravates and upsets and throws into a state of imbalance your nervous system, your body, and above all, your mind. You're not doing that. 99% of mindfulness of breathing is not doing all those things that we normally do that perpetuate our unhappiness. And the 1% you're doing is you are mindfully breathing in and out. And so another benefit of this is that when thoughts of low self-esteem arise, judgmentalism arises, craving arises, jealousy arises, anger, irritation, resentment arises. They arise, but really now it's as if, and it's a very close as if, it's as if the psychological immune system of your mind has now so robust that when the viruses and bacteria of resentment, low self-esteem, aggression, and so forth come and want to infect your mind and take over and dominate your mind, they arise. They don't stand a chance. Your mind is just too healthy. And you don't have to do anything about them. They come knocking your door, nobody answers, and they just... It's quite a pitch. Quite a pitch. Is it true or not? Or is this just Buddhist showbiz? Marketing, propaganda? Well, there's no one is asking, not I or the Buddha or anybody in between, saying, well, just take our word for it. Take our word for it. Believe me, this is really true. Believe me. The Buddha didn't say that, so why should any Buddha say that? I don't say that. And if you did believe me, how does that help you exactly? If you don't do it. If I tell you, I got some fantastic medication, you're suffering with these chronic illnesses, if you take this course of medication, it will actually heal all the maladies you're experiencing. And if you just believe me, and then you go home, well, so what? If you don't believe me, or you're just saying, well, maybe, but you take the medication, then you'll know for yourself. And that's the whole spirit of Buddhism right there. The most common phrase that we hear in the early Buddhist suttas, when someone would first be asking about who is your teacher, what's the nature of the Buddhist teachings, and so forth, the very common phrase was ehipasi, come and see. Not come and believe or take refuge or believe in reincarnation. You believe in karma, okay, then you can come in. They never gave that answer. The Buddha never gave that answer. But for the followers of the Buddha, when people would be drawn to them by their presence, their kindness, their depth, their wisdom, and saying, what path are you following? Where did this come from? The answer was, come and see. If you really want to know, come and see. That's it. So this is quite an extraordinary statement. And on that note, let's take a break. Let's take a break. Good place to stop. And so it's right now, let's say 35 minutes past the hour, so let's come back at 5 minutes before the hour, and we'll go right back to practice.